Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. This message is a mixture of different messages. I'm sharing some different notes and things, so bear with me. Hopefully these messages will be helpful. Hopefully these messages will make sense and will resonate with some of you guys. I've gotten a lot of messages and questions about older videos. I have a bunch of videos, a bunch of readings, alignment challenges, written posts, and different messages on Patreon. So if you're interested in that, the link to Patreon will be in the description box. I'm recording this message around spring equinox, and this time of year can symbolize the birth of something new or new vitality being brought into your life. It can represent a form of completion or completion in some phase of your development, completion with some kind of circumstance or situation. Each day symbolizes a new beginning and a completion of some sort, but the seasons symbolize a larger phase that relate to the individual's overall journey being reflected in that specific moment of time. So it's all on how this resonates with you, what you're experiencing, and how you're interpreting your own experiences. Spring equinox can symbolize the light of your awareness, rising above problems, causing things to seem to turn in your favor, because spring equinox can symbolize ideas and deep desires of the soul beginning to surface. This time of year represents resurrection of the light within, resurrection of the spirit, of love, of wholeness. So it's about rising to a higher level and attaining some kind of victory over ignorance, lack, or separation, which is always a victory within ourselves, regardless of how that may be reflected in our experiences or in our world, individually, collectively, meaning it's some kind of freedom from past conditioning, and that freedom really has to begin within ourselves. It can also symbolize surrender, self-acceptance, and marriage, such as a sacred marriage of divine energies within. Marriage can also mean uniting with an ideal or a union with your spirit, your authentic individuality, and this can create a sense of renewed hope, increased faith, greater realization of your oneness and your unity. I see this time as a time of increasing energy, which can bring about an increase in wisdom and an increase in vitality. This can be a time where you really feel a sense of lightness and freedom from the past. There could be a renewed sense of hope. It may feel as if your future is becoming more clear, like the path is becoming more clear, more known. The first message that I wanted to share with you guys relates to this time of year, and it's all about recognizing the innate goodness within you and how by doing that, it allows higher powers to act through you for your good more easily. It's all about your connection to the truth of who you are, your connection to the living intelligence and life force within. It's really about connecting to your authentic self, fully loving and accepting yourself. You could see this as if a cosmic universal mind has an intelligence that can consciously recognize all its various individualities and all of its personalities. And creation is meant to be diverse. So although there may be unique forms at the particular level, at the spiritual level, there is a oneness, a unity, and an absoluteness. There's no superiority or inferiority. So superiority and inferiority comes from some kind of ideas or conditioning that we've introduced or that we've accepted. We put good or bad ideas upon creation, basically. So this divine intelligence, being infinite and absolute, sees all of creation as good. Because it's a higher intelligence, it is a higher and more expanded view. It's omnipotent, it's omnipresent, it's all seeing, it's all knowing. It can see all the details as well as the bigger picture. It can see what is a potential, what is coming into form, and what has already been. Like how technology can be used to determine weather ahead of time. This divine intelligence knows everything prior to it taking form on the mental, astral, and physical planes. So at every level of our being, this intelligence has an awareness of what's going on. If we were to develop such a strong awareness of this higher divine intelligence that only sees creation as good, then we, as the creation, would receive those impulses of good. Almost as if just turning in the right direction would allow those impulses of good. If the divine intelligence can only see creation as good and can only give good, then receiving comes from our recognition of our own goodness. Another way of saying this is as if ideas are projected upon a child. The child, not developed in its conscious awareness yet, may accept those ideas unintentionally and be affected by them, whether they be positive or negative, whether they be helpful or not helpful. When the child grows in its self-awareness, it begins to reason as to whether the ideas that it accepted are helpful and really true. So you could imagine that there's a higher divine intelligence that projects ideas onto creation, like a parent projects ideas onto a child. Except the divine intelligence projects pure ideas, not ideas that are based on past experiences, present circumstances, fears, or lack. This divine intelligence can only see its creation as good and can only give good. It wants to see creation reflect the pleasure, the joy, the beauty, and the abundance of its own divine image and its own divine ideals. So it's really just getting ourselves attuned to that reality or that intelligence within us, that consciousness within us. When we develop a conscious connection with this divine intelligence, we allow divine intelligence to project through us the truth of who we really are without all the conditioning, which is really like cleansing all the false or limiting ideas that we've unintentionally accepted. Like a perfect, or kind of like a parent holding a perfect, beautiful, loving idea about their child. And that child is nourished by that idea because it's one that builds up. It's one that increases life. It gives love, it gives freedom, and it builds up the character, the strength, the health. Another way of describing this is anyone who increases in self-awareness and knowledge and wisdom would increase in their capacity to love, and it would increase their ability to realize our unity and their oneness, to see creation as good. So therefore, those who have attained knowledge, wisdom, automatically would feel an inner sense of responsibility to see others and to see creation from a state of love and unity, because divine intelligence would be projecting this truth through the individual's soul and through the individual's awareness. So they would automatically be able to hold and receive more light and would be able to give more light to the world. And this leads me to my next message about opening the flow to receiving and how that relates to giving. Divine intelligence constantly projects divine energies through the innermost parts of us. The inner depths of the soul and the subconscious is where wisdom and life spring up from, individually, collectively. And what has hindered this connection for many are the ideas we've accepted about ourselves and the ideas that we've accepted about others and our world. If we allow divine intelligence to shine through us and trust that its idea about us must be good because it sees creation as good. It must be expansive and life increasing, then change would come more easily, and we would see the difference between eternal principles as energies and mental impressions related to opinions or conditions. Basically, we would see the difference between what builds up and what is anti the affirmative. If we want to experience ourselves as whole and complete, we couldn't affirm our anti-wholeness or anti-completeness at the same time and get the result of wholeness. It would just be neutralized or cause this back and forth. The consciousness of wholeness wouldn't be integrated while affirming any kind of ideas that deny wholeness. So if we believe God is good, then we must develop that dominant consciousness in order to experience that reflected in ourselves and in our reality. So if we believe that creation is good, then we have to develop that as a dominant state of consciousness in order to see that reflected in ourselves and in our reality. And it takes persistence and just continuing forward with that state of consciousness. It really becomes about how we're directing our awareness moment to moment, what we're kind of always going back to from within ourselves, the ideas that we're always going back to from within ourselves. If we get the consciousness of divine intelligence as projecting the idea of us as good and can only give good to us, then we would easily shift into the affirmative side of life, where there's increasing livingness, increasing peace, increasing joy, regardless of how negative or limited the past experiences have been. So there may be a mechanical movement to creation, one that is exact, like what we see with time, the planets, the seasons. But there's also an affirmative side. There's levels to creation, and there's an anti-affirmative or negating side. We rise above the mechanical nature and the negating side through the affirmative principle. Then we become consciously one with the living intelligence that's acting through creation and acting through the mechanical nature of things. So we can't really see from a higher state until we rise beyond the mechanical control of movement of creation and into that still light, which is the divine intelligence and the power of creation. And this is a process of rising from one level of creation to another level from within ourselves. It brings a sense of comfort, appreciation, and joy. We then access higher dimensional views, and the limiting ideas we held about ourselves, about others, and our world are seen as past shifting shadows, because the angles of the self and all the different points of view have changed, or they've come together to give a fuller picture, which is one of wholeness, oneness, and completeness. I also think this is why there's been so much talk about end times in the world. The end time stuff is all mental pictures. It's activated by states of consciousness that we move through until we do this full turn or full revolution from within ourselves, and we reach the original substance, the original sound of creation, which some may call the great eternal I am. So it's like an Xing of the limiting persona or conditioning of the past to be fully integrated and incorporated into the living intelligence and universal purpose. It's principles that express through manifested creation as pictures and conditions, and then we observe those principles and give meaning to them based on what's taking place within ourselves. It's all this deeper alchemical process. And we can only see and experience the true order of creation and our unity as one world when that true order of creation and unity has been more fully established in our own individual consciousness. Then we will see, by the light of those true ideas that are projected through us, from a state of oneness and unity with that universal mind. And this happens individually, though it is natural that more people that experience this or come into the conscious connection within themselves will automatically bring more light into the world, or more of this awareness into the world. They will project the divine idea that is projected through themselves into the world. So this original idea of creation, all these different archetypes would be integrated and balanced within the individual. So they'd express a harmonious individuality, one that's acting in harmony with creation and the collective. And I think this is why there's been so much change in the world. As we purify our own hearts, we allow more light to shine through, and the changes taking place in the world are for a permanent change, for the good of all. So it's a cleansing at an individual level and collective level. It's as if all of humanity is being freed from a limiting level of creation that was bound to limiting conditions of the past, limiting laws of nature and materiality. In consciousness, we rise from within, and we do this, or as we do this, there's like a reversal in the consciousness, and it's restored to its true divine order. So you could see it as consciousness descends into materiality, it reaches an awareness of its limitation. And in that, it experiences a form of negation. And then from there, it starts reaching towards its source. It turns towards its beginning. And that's what kind of activates this affirmative principle within. And from there, there's an increasing state of living. We rise through that reversal in consciousness. There's a restoration of the true order of things from within. And then from that point, it's like reaching a point of equilibrium. And from there, there's an increase in life, an increase in joy, an increase in good. And it's from that point of equilibrium that we're seeing that creation is good. We're seeing this idea that divine intelligence has about us and about creation as being good. And then the soul can function harmoniously. It can go from an anti-affirmative, negative, negating state to an affirmative, increasing, fully living state. And this naturally creates healing because one becomes more of a pure channel of that living light and can give that light to others. So when we get the right idea about ourselves, all right, redo that. And this naturally creates healing because we become more of a pure channel of that living light that can give that light to others. When we get the right idea about ourselves and about others, it allows us to receive more light in order to be givers of that light. Another way of thinking about this is you are the creation that divine intelligence wants to bring to life more fully. You are the creation and the form that the light wants to give joy, peace, pleasure, health, and abundance to. So you're the creation, the form that the affirmative principle wants to bring to life. And divine intelligence can only see creation as good and can only give good. And this is how the world is brought to life or brought to an illuminated state by the light. And this is what people would call the return of Christ or the second coming. It is a principle that awakens in us, each individual soul, through a law that's fulfilled, and then that's reflected in a greater soul or within the world. It's the active principle influencing the passive principle in an affirmative way rather than a negating way. So in a building up way rather than a tearing down way. The conditioned self is transformed, and because of that, we become selfless in a way that allows more love and more true aspects of ourselves to shine through. It's what people would call the world to come as well. It's another level of the world or another level of the universal soul that we rise into from within ourselves, except this is done consciously. We see that there's only life and increasing life, similar to birth, but we rise into the universal womb, the universal soul from within ourselves, from within our own soul, and we're cleansed, transformed, and it's a conscious experience. You're the same person, but without being hindered by the past experiences, past conditionings, the past limitations. You see yourself more clearly, more purely. You see others in the world more clearly and purely. You then come into the consciousness of really being a new creation, which is really being and becoming your authentic self, your divine self, that's unhindered by the previous cycle and the previous level of creation. So you travel through spiritual ages or ages of humanity and consciousness from within yourself, and how you see the world reflects that change and reflects what kind of age or consciousness phase of humanity you're seeing from. The transit from one age to another takes place from within, and this new creation, your divine authentic self, is reflecting that divine idea of you, which is only good and can only give good. So this is what creates the feeling of a change and change in your experience. It's one of peace, joy, health, harmony, increasing life, abundance, creativity, freedom, unity, oneness. And these are the finer things. They're the more subtle energies that we attune ourselves to, and then we embody and experience. And because of that, we see it reflected in our world. Through our own perception, our own perspective of things, and how we interpret things, we'll be living in that experience. I love you guys, and I hope this was helpful. I'll talk to you soon.